My name is Rebecca Thompson. I work as a nurse at the county hospital here in Phoenix, Arizona. What I'm about to share sounds unbelievable, I know, but I need to tell this story because Jesus instructed me to do so. Lately, several people have been asking me, Rebecca, what happened to you? Because truthfully, I'm different now. My coworkers notice it. My family sees it. Even my neighbors wonder why I seem so, I don't know how to describe it, more vibrant with life. It all began on October 15th last year. I started something I had never truly done before, a genuine fast. Not just skipping a meal, but going without food for 6 entire days. Water only. I can imagine what you're thinking. That sounds extreme, doesn't it? And it was, but I felt this inner calling, as if God was asking me to do this. So I did. The 6th day was challenging. I won't lie. I was tired, somewhat shaky, but I experienced an inexplicable peace. My prayers seemed sharper, more focused. I was driving to my mother's house around 6 a.m. The streets were empty, just how I liked them. Worship music played softly as I prayed for my brother, who has struggled with addiction for years. Suddenly, everything went dark. A driver, intoxicated at 6 o'clock in the morning, ran a red light at about 50 miles per hour, hitting my car directly on the driver's side. Later, doctors told me my heart had stopped for exactly 17 minutes and 23 seconds. Those 17 minutes felt like hours. One moment I was in my crushed car, the next, I was floating above the scene. I could see everything. Paramedics working on my body, the drunk man sitting on the curb crying, even the neighborhood lady who came out in her robe to see what happened. Strangely, I wasn't afraid. I just felt deeper peace than I've ever known. I began to rise upward. There was a tunnel, not of darkness, but of light, living light. I know it sounds strange, but that's the only way I can describe it. The light had personality, welcoming, warm, and loving. Emerging from the tunnel, I found myself in an entirely different place. I can't possibly describe what I saw. Colors that don't exist on Earth, music that seemed to emanate from everywhere at once, and light brighter than the sun, yet comfortable to look at. What captured my attention wasn't the beauty though. It was these golden threads of light stretching from Earth upward to where I was. Thousands, perhaps millions of them. That's when I heard his voice. Rebecca, I knew immediately it was Jesus. His voice resonated through my entire being. I felt completely known and completely loved simultaneously. I brought you here to show you something your eyes have never seen. Then he appeared before me. I've seen depictions of Jesus my whole life, paintings, films, stained glass windows. None came close. His presence was overwhelming, pure love and power radiating from him in waves. His eyes held such depth. I felt he could see every moment of my life, every thought I'd ever had, and he loved me anyway. Watch, he said, pointing to those golden threads I kept staring at. Do you see those? I nodded, unable to look away. Those are people fasting and praying right now. I was astounded. Each thread represented someone on earth who had given up food to seek God. The brightest ones, the truly brilliant threads, were people who weren't just going through motions, their hearts were pure. I watched one thread near me pulse brighter and brighter. Jesus smiled. That's Margaret in Ohio, day 3 of her fast. She's praying for her grandson. Then he explained, most of my children don't understand the power they have. When you fast with the right heart, seeking me and my kingdom, you partner with heaven in ways you cannot imagine. He showed me my own fast. The 6 days I'd gone without food. I witnessed how each day had created a clearer, stronger connection between heaven and earth. It was like watching a muscle grow stronger with each workout. What truly amazed me was when Jesus took me to what he called the halls of time. I saw Moses during his 40-day fast when he received the 10 Commandments. But now, I could see what was really happening in the spiritual realm. His fasting had literally created space for God's glory to manifest in a way that enabled him to receive those commandments. I witnessed Daniel during his fasts and how they pushed back dark spiritual forces over entire regions. I saw countless people throughout history whose fasting had shifted spiritual atmospheres and changed events in ways they never knew about. Rebecca, Jesus said, I'm showing you this because my church is entering a season where understanding fasting will be crucial. The battles ahead cannot be won through regular prayer alone. I was speechless. Then he showed me something that moved me to tears. I saw what happened when groups of believers fasted together. It created what looked like spiritual storms of power. These combined fasts generated momentum that could shift entire atmospheres over cities and nations. But Jesus said, his voice growing more serious. Not all fasting carries the same weight. He revealed different types of fasting. Fasting done for show, or merely out of religious duty, had almost no spiritual impact. But fasting done with humility, genuine repentance, and a pure desire to draw closer to God created powerful spiritual dynamics. Then he showed me something even more surprising. Fasting actually changes our spiritual DNA. When we fast, our spiritual senses are upgraded. Extended periods of fasting create new spiritual pathways that allow us to operate with greater discernment and spiritual authority, even after the fast ends. Many of my children see fasting as a way to get me to do something, Jesus explained. But fasting isn't about convincing me. It's about positioning yourself to partner with what I'm already wanting to do. When you fast, you tune your spiritual frequency to heaven's frequency. What Jesus showed me next was profound. Believers who were fasting appeared to be wearing additional spiritual armor. Their prayers during fasting were like precise spiritual weapons, hitting their targets with increased accuracy and power. But there was a warning too. The enemy specifically targets people during fasting because he knows its power. Protection during fasting is crucial. Jesus said, "Stay under the cover of my blood and my word. Don't fast in your own strength." Jesus then showed me how fasting relates to spiritual authority. Each day of sincere fasting increased a believer's spiritual authority in prayer and spiritual warfare. It was like watching someone get promoted in heaven's army. Their words carried more weight, and their prayers had greater impact. Remember, Jesus said, "This authority isn't earned, it's granted." Fasting positions you to carry greater authority, but the authority itself comes from me. One of the most beautiful things Jesus showed me was how fasting affects worship. During times of fasting, our worship carries a special fragrance in heaven. The sacrifice of fasting adds something precious to our prayers and praise. When my children worship while fasting, Jesus explained, it creates a unique harmony with heaven's worship. Then he showed me something that helped me understand why he'd called me too fast for my brother. I saw how fasting breaks dark chains in the spiritual realm. These chains represented addictions, generational curses, spiritual oppression. When someone fasts and prays with faith and pure motives, these chains begin to weaken and break. I wept. I realized God had been preparing me to fight for my brother in a way I never knew was possible. Jesus showed me how our fasting partners with his ongoing ministry of intercession. When we fast, we join him in his work in a special way, and this partnership brought him joy, actual joy. "Rebecca," he said, "when my children fast with pure hearts, it moves my heart. It's not about earning my love. You already have that fully. It's about partnering with my purposes in deeper ways." Jesus showed me how fasting creates spiritual bridges. These bridges connected different aspects of God's work, creating highways for his power to flow. Sometimes our fasting creates connections that God uses long after our fast is over. He showed me how fasting affects our spiritual inheritance too. As we fast, we clear away debris from wells of spiritual inheritance, allowing those ancient springs to flow again. Some people's fasting restores access to spiritual blessings that have been blocked for generations. Jesus then revealed something about fasting and spiritual multiplication. When we fast with pure hearts, God often multiplies the spiritual impact beyond what we could imagine. One person's faithful fasting could affect an entire community, creating ripple effects that continue for generations. The spiritual impact of fasting often goes far beyond what you can see, Jesus explained. Sometimes the greatest fruit of your fasting will only be seen in eternity. As my time in heaven was ending, Jesus gave me one final understanding. We're entering times where understanding the power of fasting will be more important than ever. God is calling his people back to biblical fasting as preparation for the days ahead. "Tell them what you've seen," Jesus commanded. "Tell them that I'm calling my church back to biblical fasting. The time is short and my people need to understand these truths." Just before everything began to fade, Jesus looked at me with such love that it felt like my spirit would burst. "Remember," he said, "the power isn't in the fasting itself. The power is in me." Fasting positions you to partner with what I'm already wanting to do. The next thing I knew, I was back in my body in the hospital. The medical staff couldn't believe what they were seeing. Not only had I returned to life after being dead for over 17 minutes, but I had no brain damage or lasting effects from the trauma. The doctors called it a miracle. They were right, but they didn't know half of it. 3 months later, something even more incredible happened. I was in my bedroom praying and fasting again, this time for 7 days. I wasn't in an accident this time. The doctor said I had an unexplained cardiac event. My heart stopped for 4 minutes and 12 seconds, but during those precious moments, I was transported back to that realm of living light. Jesus was there again, his presence just as overwhelming as before. But this time he seemed more like a friend eager to share a precious secret. "Rebecca," he said, "I've brought you back to show you the fruit of what you've learned." Suddenly, I was shown a view of the spiritual impact that had occurred since I began sharing my testimony about fasting. I saw streams of light multiplying across the earth. Each light represented someone who had begun to understand and practice biblical fasting after hearing what Jesus had shown me. "Watch," he said, and I saw people's lives changing, addictions breaking, healing happening, relationships being restored, all through the combined power of prayer and biblical fasting. What touched me most was seeing the intimate moments between these people and Jesus during their fast. Each sacrifice of food had created special space for deep communion with him. "Do you see?" Jesus asked. "What I showed you wasn't just for you. It was for my beloved church. Every truth you've shared has planted seeds that are now bearing fruit." Then he showed me something that made me cry again. Every time someone applied these truths about fasting in their life, it created a ripple effect that impacted not just their life, but generations to come. These ripples were creating waves of revival, preparing the way for something greater. "The days ahead," Jesus said, "will require my people to walk in levels of spiritual authority they've never known before. What I showed you about fasting isn't optional. It's essential preparation for what's coming." He revealed how the corporate understanding of fasting was creating a new spiritual dynamic in his church. As more believers began to understand and practice biblical fasting, their combined spiritual authority was pushing back darkness in unprecedented ways. "Tell them again," Jesus said, "but this time, tell them with the authority of one who has seen the fruit. Tell them that I'm calling my church back to biblical fasting, not as a religious duty, but as preparation for the greatest outpouring of my Spirit they've ever seen." Just before everything faded, Jesus gave me one final message. "Tell them that I'm not calling them to fasting to earn my love. They already have that completely. I'm calling them to fasting because I want to entrust them with my power. The darkness is increasing, but through prayer and fasting, my light in them will shine brighter still." When I returned to my body this second time, I knew with even greater certainty why God had allowed me to see these things. This second experience left me with an even deeper conviction. Jesus is calling his church to rediscover the power of biblical fasting, not as a way to manipulate God or earn his favor, but as a means of positioning ourselves to partner with heaven in these crucial times. My brother has been clean for 8 months now. The breakthrough came during my third extended fast after these experiences. Coincidence? I don't think so. The question isn't whether Jesus is calling us to fasting. He clearly is. The question is, how will we respond? If you're listening to this, it's not by accident. Jesus is inviting you into a deeper understanding of fasting, not as a religious obligation, but as an opportunity for profound partnership with heaven. The spiritual realm is more real than anything we can see with our physical eyes. Through biblical fasting, we can partner with heaven in ways that will impact generations to come. The time is now. Jesus is calling, and he's waiting for his church to respond.